Good morning. My name is Joe Richardson. I'm a partner at McCune Law Group, and we're here to do a press conference related to two recently filed matters involving our clients, Nicholas Diaz, as well as his sons. I'm also here not only with Mr. Diaz, but with Brenda Popka, who is our senior associate, taking much of the laboring oar related to this case. So I want to thank her publicly and recognize her as well, just in case you don't see her as much a bit later. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to speak. Mr. Diaz will come up with a brief statement. He won't answer any questions himself. And then I'll come back, let everyone know what we're looking for in the litigation, and then take a couple questions. So what the lawsuit is about, why we're here. This is encompassed, what we're doing here is encompassed in two recently filed lawsuits, very different lawsuits, but both filed against the same defendant, which is the County of San Bernardino. These lawsuits are about civil rights violations, discrimination on grounds of sex, gender, and more specifically sexual orientation, these violations which occurred pertaining to plaintiff Mr. Diaz as well as his family. Plaintiffs have suffered civil rights violation, humiliation, loss of freedom. He suffered loss of employment as well as for-time custody of his minor son. His adopted sons suffered humiliation, civil rights violations at the hands of county agencies, and had to be separated from their father. The civil rights case alleges false imprisonment / false arrest, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, violations of the Bain Act, California Civil Code Section 52.1, and violations of the Ralph Act, California Civil Code, Civil Code sections, 52.1 for Bain, 51.7 for Ralph Act. The employment case alleges violations of the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and failure to prevent all three, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, as well as public policy violations pursuant to California Labor Code Section 1102.5. There is a real irony here that we have. Our client, an adult gay man, created a life centered on participation in the community. He followed the rules, including county rules, to adopt two sons who were in the foster care system and had very different lives before they got together. He not only saved them, they saved him. He got a job with the County of San Bernardino and looked forward to a career of service with the county, as well as the ability to provide for his sons. But ultimately, prejudices, false assumptions, turned his and his sons' lives upside down. On about October 30th, 2024, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received a cyber tip from an employee of Phoenix International Limited, which operates as OnlyFans. This report alleged that a certain OnlyFans account holder uploaded a file containing suspected child abuse material. The report included the source IP address and user information. The allegation ended up being that Mr. Diaz, who had an OnlyFans account, had a picture, was in a picture with a prepubescent child. Acting on the tip, San Bernardino County agents sought a warrant. The related detective affidavit from a detective in the Crimes Against Children's detail lacked information indicating the detective's formal training in identifying prepubescence from an image. It's very important. it failed to they seemed to fail to consult experts or verify a lay opinion regarding the age of the subjects in the paragraph. There was no information that was provided to allow the court to independently assess the age of the subjects, such as a description of the entirety of the visible body parts of the minor, of the primary or secondary sex characteristics which were identifiable or present, an estimate of the Tanner image of development of the minor, and the basis for the estimation. There was nothing more than a conclusory assertion that the person was a prepubescent child with nothing more. Despite this, as a civil rights complaint alleges, a warrant was issued to search Mr. Diaz's home, photograph his private part, and seize his electronic devices. On November 26, 2024, we allege Mr. Diaz was unjustly detained at his place of employment for the County of San Bernardino, causing him public humiliation and embarrassment in front of his colleagues. He was transported to his home, but kept away from the front door where the County of San Bernardino Sheriff's Department was conducting an invasive forensic search. The entire time, Mr. Diaz offered to voluntarily provide the Sheriff's Department with any information to clear up what he knew to be a mistake. It was easily verifiable that the person in the photo in question was actually an adult. Despite informing the officers that his children were inside the residence and offering to help ensure a smooth search of his property, Mr. Diaz was denied the opportunity to reassure his children, one of whom was a minor. Instead, officers approached the residence with guns drawn, forcibly entering the home by kicking down the door. At his home, officers who, as we stated, already had Mr. Diaz detained, kicked the door down. His sons were mistreated and ignored, including one minor son being straddled to the ground by several law enforcement personnel and having a medical pump for diabetes taken away, ripped, displaced, is the easiest way to describe it, despite Mr. Diaz informing them of the nature of the device, and particularly Mr. Diaz's older son. The scene unfolded in front of the older son, who desperately sought answers and pleaded for his brother's medical care while witnessing his mistreatment firsthand. Interestingly, this was brought about and this was carried out at the leadership of the crimes, as we allege, the crimes against children's detail in San Bernardino County. It's meant to prevent harm to children. But here, the crimes against children detail inflicted harm on a minor child. Another San Bernardino County agency, the Department of Children and Family Services, separated Mr. Diaz from his minor son for nearly a year. Mr. Diaz was removed from his home. He could not live at the same place as his minor son and was limited to only a few hours of supervised visitation with his minor son. The Department of Children and Family Services failed to conduct a thorough and unbiased investigation. Specifically, the agency just relied on information provided by a detective without interviewing the claimant for months or gathering balanced information. Our client, Mr. Diaz, begged for the opportunity to provide information, including being in touch with the adult that was actually in the picture. We alleged that this one-sided, wrong-headed approach led to a biased process aimed at terminating the client's parental rights unjustly. Following the arrest and search, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, we allege, disseminated false and damaging statements to the media, further harming Mr. Diaz's reputation. His mugshot was released with claims of potential additional victims, and false assertions that he ran a foster home. In truth, Mr. Diaz adopted 2 sons, providing them a loving and supportive environment until he was unjustly removed from his own home and lost custody of his youngest son due to a baseless warrant issued without probable cause. Mr. Diaz, to this day, has never been charged with a crime. Even then, the Department of Children and Family Services failed to update their records or take steps to close their file for months after it became apparent that no charges were imminent based on the information that was found out, which is information Mr. Diaz sought to point them to from the very beginning. This delay unnecessarily prolonged the separation of this family, causing further emotional harm. Now, in a cruel irony, at the time of this, what we allege to be a false arrest, Mr. Diaz actually worked for San Bernardino County as well. Specifically, he was employed as an Office Specialist 3 within the Quality Management section of the county's Department of Behavioral Health, beginning in September 2024. The employment complaint alleges that Mr. Diaz received positive feedback regarding his performance and anticipated a long-term career in public service. The employment lawsuit alleges that following Mr. Diaz's wrongful arrest in late November 2024, from which no criminal charges have ultimately resulted, as we've stated, county representatives urged him to resign rather than remain employed while the matter was reviewed. Mr. Diaz alleges that he expressed his desire to keep his job and asserted his belief that he was entitled to related due process protections, including the presumption of innocence and a fair investigation, while he worked to clear his name and reunite with his children. The complaint further alleges that county representatives presented resignation as the preferred option and conveyed that Mr. Diaz's pursuit of his employment rights would actually result in negative consequences. Mr. Diaz ultimately resigned under circumstances we contend, amount to constructive termination under California law. Our lawsuit, the employment lawsuit, alleges these actions were taken in violation of public policy and were motivated, at least in part, by discrimination based on sex, gender, and particularly sexual orientation in violation of the California Fair Employment and Housing Act. As alleged, Mr. Diaz was never formally charged with a crime, has since ultimately been reunited with his children, and following court proceedings to make sure it occurred, had seized property returned. The complaint maintains that an objective investigation would have exonerated him and that the county failed to take a neutral wait-and-see approach consistent with the rights afforded to public employees. With that, I'll have Mr. Diaz come, make a statement, and then we'll return. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Nicholas Diaz. I'm an adult gay male, and most importantly, an adoptive father of 2 amazing sons. I was fortunate enough to be able to adopt 2 children that were in the San Bernardino County foster care system. On December 21st, 2001, I adopted my first son. November 1st, 2015, I adopted my second son. I went through all the things that one goes through in order to be able to adopt. I passed background checks and fulfilled all necessary requirements. I was a FOSDOC parent, meaning that I was licensed for each child solely for the pursuit of adoption. I never ran a foster home. There was never a conflict between being a loving, supportive father of my children and having an active social life. I had social media accounts, including an OnlyFans account. I was always careful to keep my social life separate from my life as a father. I understood very well that all that I had gone through in order to be a father, I would have never done anything in either actuality or perception to jeopardize that. I would never harm children or publicly display pictures of children. My OnlyFans account never had pictures of children on it. On September 24th, on September 2024, after working hard to find a job with the County of San Bernardino, I received full-time employment as an Office Specialist 3 with the Quality Management Section of the County of San Bernardino Department of Behavioral Health. Within 2 months of tenure, I had a glowing evaluation. I could see myself having a productive career serving the County of San Bernardino. The future looked bright for my family. Life was complete. Then, on November 26th, 2024, everything changed. While at work, I was wrongfully arrested by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department based on a search and arrest warrant obtained by the detective the previous day. I was publicly humiliated and embarrassed in front of my coworkers. The warrant was predicated on a misidentification of a photograph from the OnlyFans platform. Sheriff's Department representatives wrongly concluded that a photograph on my page depicted child sexual abuse material involving a prepubescent child. In fact, the individual in the photograph was a consenting adult male in his 30s. They went on to search my home while I was in custody. I informed them that my sons were home. They presented no threat and asked for the opportunity to reassure my children in real time. I was helpless as the Sheriff's Department kicked down my door, straddled my youngest son to the ground, and ripped away his medical pump device, causing it to malfunction and creating unnecessary pain, stress, and health risk. He is a type 1 diabetic and insulin dependent. The paramedics needed to be called due to his glucose number immediately accelerating. While being compliant, my oldest son unsuccessfully tried to reason with the officers to spare unnecessary pain and medical danger to his brother. My youngest son ultimately had to be transported to the hospital. The morning of my arrest, I sought to contact my immediate supervisor to state I knew the arrest was a huge mistake and I was doing all I could to get to the bottom of the situation. She refused to speak to me. I was directed to another county representative in the Human Resources Department. That representative told me that they felt I was innocent. It would be best that if I felt I was innocent, it would be best for everyone involved if I immediately left my employment with the county. I pleaded with them to give me time to figure out what was going on, and they answered by asking, quote, well, what if you did do this, end quote, and adding that if I kept working there, they would have to do an investigation of their own and things would only get worse for me, and they would terminate me anyway. I was implored for my own sake and that of the clients that they serve to forego any rights I may have had and resign. They demanded a simple email statement that I was leaving the organization. It was clear that I would not be able to survive in the hostile environment that my department's reaction to the county's accusations created. I believed I had no choice. Following my arrest and the search of my home, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department disseminated false and damaging statements to the media, further harming my reputation. A mugshot was released the very next morning with claims of potential additional victims and false assertions that I ran a foster home. My life had been shattered overnight. The larger community seized on this narrative that the situation created. The public followed the county's lead. I was subjected to public ridicule, threats. I could not even go to local establishments where I lived. This left me in an impossible situation. I could not live with my minor son and was given extremely limited supervised visitation. I had to find other living arrangements at great personal expense that I could not afford. I was not interviewed by investigators for months, even though I could confirm the identity of the adult that was in the picture in question. It was as if the county had too much invested in their narrative that they had created. It was months before I was allowed to live with my children. I needed to undertake legal proceedings to finally have my seized property returned. There is no doubt that this was a tragic rush to judgment. The Crimes Against Children detail, which led the charge against me, is supposed to prevent harm to children. But here, the Crimes Against Children detail inflicted great harm on a minor child, my son. Even though I was entitled to the presumption of innocence and I was never charged, many of the county assumed me guilty to the point of not fulfilling obligations to investigate. I believe that my status as an adult gay man was used against me by the county to prejudge me and disseminate false information against me. The county did not want the truth. They knew that their failure to seek it would create a, quote, truth that was in fact false. The county surely does not want to admit its mistake in falsely accusing me and slowly and inadequately investigating me and in firing me. But I'm here to confirm that the mistakes they made have devastated my life and that of my children. I cannot begin to emphasize the pain, the sorrow, the distress that this situation has caused my family. The family I raised my hand under oath to adopt and protect. I couldn't. We will never be the same. Notwithstanding all this, we're determined to get through this, one day and one step at a time. I seek justice. I have to. More if it helps anyone else that is falsely accused, fired, or perhaps treated differently due to their sex, gender, including sexual orientation. It is worth the related struggle. I've already been in the news due to lies. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak the truth. False information and the failure to undertake a thorough investigation led to a rush in judgment by county agencies and the immediate goal of ending my employment. While I did not choose to be in this situation, I certainly choose to be a voice for myself, for my family, and for others that may not feel heard. Together we will right these terrible wrongs. Thank you.
Let me say, Mr. Diaz, it is an honor to represent you, to represent your sons in this quest to begin to get your lives back. So let's talk about what that looks like. First, the things we're looking for. First, we asked the county to do a thorough investigation of A, why they sought a warrant under these circumstances without having all the facts. B, why they took so long to talk to our client when things could have been straightened out quickly, and presumably part of the investigation would be talking to him. And C, why it took so long to close Mr. Diaz's file and reunite him with his son after it was clear that no charges would be filed. We intend to use this litigation to get down to the bottom of all of these things. Second thing we're looking for. Should we find that, in fact, the state of current regulations, in a worst case, like ours, allow for what we saw go on, i.e. misinformation and lack of information at the beginning, failure to quickly reunite family at the end, and slow and inadequate investigation throughout, we want it changed. Now, Mr. Diaz, and we want it changed now, Mr. Diaz already had his observations about the imperfections of the county CPS system, having dealt with it. But that system gave him his children a debt he could never repay. Sadly, that same system almost took his minor child away, certainly did for a time, and kept them separated to their detriment longer than it needed to. Next, we want to understand why his employer, who happened to be San Bernardino County as well, pushed and effectively forced our client into a constructive termination with no investigation. They were afraid to do their jobs. Our client was always innocent. There were no charges filed. He should not have been constructively terminated based on these allegations because it was the easy thing to do with no investigation. And, of course, to the extent any of this became reality, or more likely because of our client's sexual orientation, we want to root that discrimination out entirely, completely, and permanently. Finally, and importantly, we seek redress for our clients, all of them. Mr. Diaz and his children have suffered by their treatment by San Bernardino County, from Mr. Diaz's false arrest to an overly aggressive home search while Mr. Diaz watched, to mistreatment of his minor son, including ignoring his medical issues while the other son watched. Also, their lives were broken apart for nearly a year, and they were still trying to put them back together. In short, the aggressiveness that came with him, with the rush to judgment and with kicking down the door, etc., did not show up when it came time to investigate. Our client, Mr. Diaz, also lost his employment. He suffered lost wages, past and future, severe emotional distress, and serious damage to his future employment prospects within the county and perhaps beyond. His reputation may never recover. It doesn't take a lawyer, I'm a lawyer and everything, but it doesn't take a lawyer to know that if you were accused, as our client has been accused, it could cost you everything: your job, your reputation, and maybe even your safety. And that's exactly what happened here. Like I said before, prejudices, false assumptions work together to turn Mr. Diaz and his son's lives upside down. But I declare to you today that this is the beginning of getting their lives back right side up. For the cause of helping them get their lives back right side up, we are glad to be of service. With that, we'll take any questions.
Has the Sheriff's Department issued any corrections or retractions regarding the false media statements?
We don't believe there have been any formal corrections or retractions. There's nothing that says out loud, we got it wrong. We're glad that Mr. Diaz is reunited with his children, etc., but there's been no retraction or any of those things. And on some level, I guess as an attorney, you understand that, but this is so egregious that there's been no public or private recognition that this was made very, very wrong. And that's why we're involved, to make it right.
Mr. Diaz was detained at the workplace in front of his colleagues. Why did this occur, given that he was cooperative?
You'd have to ask them to be sure. I think that there are a lot of different ways that this could have been done that could have hopefully preserved his dignity and integrity for the moment. Let me quickly say, I understand how people feel about folks that are correctly accused, as Mr. Diaz was. But everyone is still entitled to a presumption of innocence. And because of that, and because of how people feel about certain people in society, as it were, people that harm children, it made it all the more important that they got it right. And maybe part of that is approaching an arrest, a questioning, an investigation with enough sensitivity, for lack of a better word, that just in case you get it wrong, it doesn't do as much damage as it did. They can snap their fingers and say, I'm sorry, but Mr. Diaz can't go to the store. So we still got damage we've got to deal with. And there was much more at stake because of the nature of the charges, because of the nature of the allegations. And that's why this is really, really so wrong and so broken.
One more. Can you describe what happened with the diabetic son's medical pump, and were there any injuries or health consequences that resulted?
Ultimately, as I understand, he had to go to the hospital, and because his glucose numbers went way up, my understanding is that there are monitoring systems because he's a type 1 diabetic, and that monitoring system was basically compromised despite the fact that Mr. Diaz said ahead of time, hey, please approach this with some level of sensitivity, and that the son who actually witnessed it, the older son, was actually there on site watching it happen. And so we do believe, however, thankfully, that Mr. Diaz's youngest son is doing fine now, but that's not to say and not to minimize fine physically as it pertains to recovering from that incident, but we know that there's more than just physical damage that we're dealing with here. None of them have recovered from the larger issue that is presented by all of this that's occurred. Okay.
No further questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.